the place that's called heaven. It's made for the pure and the free. These truths in God's word He has given. How beautiful heaven must be.
Human reasoning rationalizes sin away. And human reasoning sometimes uses the Bible in an effort, a vain effort, to rationalize sin. One of those passages is found in John chapter 8, verses 3 through 7. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This said they, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convinced by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go, and sin no more. I suppose that we've all heard the statement, well, we're all sinners. That's usually said when one condemns sin in the life of another. The idea is set forth that no one can condemn sin in the life of another because we're all sinners. When one condemns sin, the retort, Let him that is without sin cast the first stone, is usually hurled. That smug reply assumes that Jesus condones sin in men's lives because all have sinned. But this passage does not teach that. Verse 6 gives the reason for their question to Jesus. This, they said, tempting him that they might accuse him. Their intent was not to mete out justice and to follow the law of Moses, but it was to discredit Jesus. The dilemma that they wished to get him in was like that of the tribute money when they asked him, Is it lawful to pay tribute unto Caesar or not? To affirm the binding validity and force of the law of Moses in this instance would have been contrary to Roman law. On the other hand, if he set aside Moses' law, it would make him liable to the charge of breaking that law, which would be an aid in killing his influence among the Jews. In one case, they could accuse him to the Romans and place him under civil authority, and in the other, they could denounce him as setting aside the law of Moses. And they thought they had Jesus in a dilemma. Adultery was punishable by death under the law of Moses, and punishment was to be inflicted on both parties, not just the woman. Leviticus 20 and verse 10 says, And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and adulteress shall surely be put to death. The validity of the charge, of course, had to be established by 2 or 3 witnesses, and the law required the witnesses to cast the first stone at the adulterer. Deuteronomy 17:7. Jesus neither set aside the law of Moses nor condoned the woman's sin. The scribes and Pharisees failed to bring the man who was also guilty of adultery. And so if she was caught in the very act of adultery as they charged, then they should have brought the man also. When Jesus said, "He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her," he invoked the law of Moses' requirement that the hand of the witnesses shall be first upon him to put him to death. He that is without sin among you did not mean the first stone could not be cast if any of them had sinned in any fashion, but it referred to those who had witnessed the adultery. The witnesses would be those without sin. Jesus presented them with a dilemma. They claimed the woman committed adultery. They said she was caught in the act, which they obviously had to observe if she was caught in the act. Therefore, Jesus merely followed Moses' law, saying the witnesses must first cast a stone at her. The latter part of this instance is generally used to imply that Jesus condoned the woman's sin. When Jesus lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, "Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee?" She said, "No man, Lord." And Jesus said unto her, "Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more." John 8:10 and 11. Jesus was very careful and was meticulous in his observance of the law of Moses. He had not been a witness to her adultery and therefore could not condemn her to death under the law. His reply that "neither do I condemn thee" was made in the legal sense. He did not condone her sin. In fact, he told her, "Go and sin no more," recognizing that she had indeed committed sin. John 8:3 through 11 does not mean that sin cannot be condemned because, quote, "we're all sinners," unquote. It teaches just the opposite. Sin can and must be condemned in the lives of all, as Jesus condemned sin in the lives of the scribes and the Pharisees and this adulterous woman. Thank you for watching.
We read of a place that's called heaven. It's made for the pure